Randy Orton's journey in WWE is more than just titles and finishing moves. Behind the cold-blooded Viper persona, there's a career shaped by struggle, setbacks, and resilience because he didn't exactly want to be a wrestler at the start. From his troubled early years and intense family influence to WWE's relentless demands, Orton's story is a roller coaster that's often hidden from the fans. But it's not all as it seems, as the real battles often take place behind the scenes. Today, we're peeling back the layers to reveal the struggles, sacrifices, and secrets that WWE tried to keep hidden about Randy Orton. Secret meaning behind Orton's tattoos. Let's start with one of the lesser-known parts of Randy Orton, his tattoos. As much as Orton's devastating RKO finisher has come to represent his Viper persona, so too have his tattoos. But there's more to this ink than meets the eye. He spent over 50 hours getting these tattoos and still commits to another 6 hours each year for touch-ups. One of the most in-your-face ones is the skull and tribal sleeve that wraps around both his arms. This design started with tribal art, which he got back when he was in WWE's developmental territory, Ohio Valley Wrestling. Over time, he expanded on these to cover up a tattoo related to his brief time in the U.S. Marine Corps, also something the WWE has tried to downplay, but we'll get to that later. Among these darker designs, Orton added roses to his arms as a tribute to his family and relationships. There's a red rose above the name of his daughter, Alana, and a simple Kim for his wife, Kimberly Kessler, on his middle finger with a small heart. What most people don't tend to notice all the time is that there's also a white pigeon on his left arm as a symbol of love and trust that represents his deeper, quieter side, but these are just tributes to his family. Orton also has a quote from the Bible tattooed on his arm, a verse from 1 Peter 5:8 that reads, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour." This verse might seem out of place for his bad guy image, but it shows a personal struggle for Orton and his need to stay alert in his own life, even while playing the heel in the ring. Orton's tattoos don't just scream badass, some of them may be intimidating, but each one represents a different part of his life. From family ties to career sacrifices to his personal battles, he carries it all with him wherever he is. Speaking of family, it's actually the reason why we even know him today. Let's get into how his father influenced him to pursue wrestling. His father forced him into wrestling. Growing up, Randy Orton had wrestling in his blood. His father, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., was a WWE Hall of Famer, and his grandfather, Bob Orton Sr., also had a respected wrestling career. The wrestling world surrounded him from a young age when kids at his school would ask him to get an autograph from his father, but this life wasn't exactly what Randy wanted. He had other dreams that didn't involve wrestling. He knew the intense lifestyle that came with the job, the long travel, the physical toll, and the pressure of constantly being in the spotlight. Watching his father, he saw how the business could consume someone's entire life, so he wanted to explore different paths. But Randy's father had a much different idea. Wrestling wasn't just a career to Bob Orton Jr., it was the family's pride and tradition. He believed Randy had a responsibility to carry on their name in the WWE, which was hard for him to ignore. Randy started his journey in WWE's developmental territory, Ohio Valley Wrestling, where he trained to become the star his father hoped he'd be. It wasn't easy, but he kept going because he didn't want to disappoint his family. Over time, he became the legend killer and made his own identity. The weight of that family legacy drove him to become the youngest world champion in WWE history. But there's always been a question of how things might have been different if he'd truly been free to choose his path. He also loves gaming, but we'll get to that later. Apart from family pressure, struggles with anger management and personal challenges also played a big role in his career, as you're about to find out. He has anger management issues. Randy Orton's temper was one of his biggest challenges during his early days with WWE. Back then, Orton was surrounded by legends like Triple H, Ric Flair, and Batista as a part of Evolution, a group of powerful seasoned stars who saw Orton as the next big thing. However, his attitude and anger issues caused major problems, and the WWE tried to downplay them. Orton's rise in Evolution came fast, and so did the pressure. He was young and talented, and his legend killer persona was bringing in huge crowds. His short fuse became a big problem, though. He insulted crew members, snapped at other wrestlers, and even infuriated WWE executives. And that kind of impulsive behavior started creating problems backstage. Coincidentally, he also starred in the Impulsive podcast. Coincidence? I think not. There were instances where Orton's anger got so out of hand that he was reprimanded and even fined by WWE. It was clear that his temper wasn't just an act, it was all real. In fact, his anger issues became such a well-known problem that WWE sent him to anger management classes, hoping they could calm his temper temper before it damaged his reputation or career. As his career advanced, he began facing more high-level matches and tough rivals, which only made him more frustrated. And while WWE attempted to keep his anger issues hidden from fans, they occasionally spilled over into his on-screen persona, giving some genuine emotion to his Viper character. The WWE's expectations and the pressure to be a superstar only made things worse. The company had invested in him, but they wanted him to fit a mold that wasn't always true to who he was, so it became part of what made him stand out. The explosive temper WWE once tried to hide turned into something they could market, a darker, edgier personality that fans couldn't look away from. Even now, while he's more experienced and calmer, the intensity is still there, but all his fame came at a cost. Early success took a personal toll. After his success with Evolution and his reign as the Legend Killer, the physical toll started to show. At WrestleMania 21, he faced off in high-stakes matches, including the Royal Rumble and heavyweight titles, all of which demanded a lot. As he took on these matches, Orton's left shoulder became a recurring problem, a problem the WWE preferred to keep out of sight. Orton was in his early 20s, still at the start of his career, yet he was being booked for one high-stakes match one after another, and his body felt every impact. He got hurt more often than he should have. The constant strain on his shoulder eventually led to an injury that required surgery, a fact that WWE was hesitant to share. They wanted fans to see him as unstoppable, so Orton continued to wrestle despite the pain. He was still relatively new to the WWE's level of competition and wasn't fully prepared for the effects it would have on his body. WWE, however, didn't allow much time for recovery, and he was back in the ring as soon as possible. As you might imagine, the injuries began to add up. Orton was dealing with issues usually seen in veterans, but at a much younger age. The shoulder surgeries were only the beginning. The damage continued over the years, from torn ligaments to joint issues, and the WWE's relentless pace rarely gave him time to heal. But Orton powered through because, he had to maintain the tough guy image, and tough guys can't seem weak. It wasn't just the physical pain, though. The grind impacted him emotionally, too. Orton knew he was expected to be WWE's next big star, but the injuries made it harder to keep up with that demand. The toll these early years his body took shows just how much the WWE really cares about its stars. His commitment to the WWE didn't end with the injuries either. It drove him to develop something iconic, the move that would come to define him, the RKO. The RKO was never his signature move. When Orton first started in WWE, Orton didn't even see the RKO as his signature move. Instead, he relied on a different style and set of moves to make an impact in the ring. But as time went on, the RKO became part of his identity in ways even Orton himself didn't expect. When Orton debuted on the main roster, he was portrayed as a cocky, arrogant member of Evolution. And back then, he only had power moves, submissions, and his devastating finishing move, the Orton Stomp. But it wasn't until he started using the RKO that he really started to get noticed by fans. This was essentially his version of the Diamond Cutter. The RKO was explosive, fast, and could be delivered out of nowhere. This made it perfect for Orton's Viper persona. The more he used it, the more the fans loved it, and Orton slowly started to realize just how much. He used it on everyone, superstars, legends, even commentators. The fans loved it. The commentators loved it. He loved it. This helped the move take on a life of its own outside the ring. Fans started making memes, YouTube compilations, and even viral videos. It was a cultural moment, but sometimes the most iconic parts of a career can happen by accident. Orton himself has admitted that the RKO was born from necessity, not just creativity. He got the inspiration from two other famous moves, the Ace Cutter, a move used by WWE's John Laurinaitis, and the Diamond Cutter, popularized by Diamond Dallas Page. But what really made the RKO different, and what made it his go-to move, was the fact that it allowed him to keep performing, despite his severe shoulder issues. Orton suffered multiple shoulder injuries early in his career, including 3 surgeries. This was a huge factor in him choosing the RKO as his finishing move. The shoulder injuries became a major concern for him, and they were part of the reason he stayed away from moves that required him to lift opponents, moves that could risk further damage to his shoulders. The RKO solved that problem. Unlike traditional power moves, the RKO doesn't require Orton to pick up his opponent. He needed a move that he could do to everybody, that he could do to Rey Mysterio or Omos. It was born out of practicality. It was, in a sense, Orton's survival tool. But despite it being one of the most famous moves in wrestling, Orton never really embraced the idea that the RKO was his move. He's often downplayed it in interviews, saying that he never expected the move to have such a big impact. But no matter how much he tried to downplay it, it's hard to think of Orton without it. Orton is one of the most gifted athletes to ever step into a WWE ring. But despite his obvious potential, the WWE held him back in more ways than one. The WWE held him back. Orton was already making a name for himself with his legend killer persona. His matches with The Undertaker, Mick Foley, and even his involvement in Evolution set the stage for him to become a major player. But instead of taking him to the top, he was usually forced to take a back seat to other, more established stars. One of the main reasons Orton was held back was his relationship with management, particularly with Triple H. There were rumors that Triple H was one of the top stars at the time, and he didn't fully support Orton's push to the top. He was supporting him on the outside, but deep down, he didn't really have his best interest at heart. WWE's tendency to push established stars like Triple H and John Cena above younger talent like Orton made it difficult for him to rise to the level he deserved. But it wasn't just backstage politics holding Orton back. The company also didn't allow him to fully develop his character and make the most out of his natural abilities. While Orton was highly talented, WWE often kept him in a narrow lane, limiting his creative freedom. His early push was strong, but WWE wasn't willing to completely give him the reins. Orton is really impressive in the ring, but he was often paired with opponents or put in situations that didn't highlight his full range. It took a long time before the WWE allowed him to fully show his ability to carry a match from start to finish. He was known for being able to work with anyone, but WWE often didn't allow him to work to his fullest potential, choosing instead to rely on other, more marketable stars. But there's another part of his life that WWE wanted to keep under wraps: the fact that Orton wasn't exactly the one-woman man the company tried to portray. Orton isn't the one-woman man the WWE portrays. WWE has always carefully crafted the images of its stars, presenting them as characters that fans can look up to. Randy Orton especially was packaged as the good guy in certain storylines, someone whose personal life mirrored the wholesome image the company wanted to project. But Orton wasn't exactly living the one-woman man image that WWE painted for him. In fact, his off-screen relationships and history were much more complicated than the fans ever realized. From the outside, Orton seemed to have the perfect family life. He had a beautiful wife, Kimberly Kessler, and was often shown in interviews or social media posts as a dedicated husband and father. But despite his public persona, Orton had a history of infidelity and relationships that went against the idealistic portrayal WWE wanted to show. Orton's infidelities were well known in the wrestling world. He had a series of extramarital affairs during his marriage to Kimberly. One of the most famous instances was his affair with fellow WWE superstar Stacy Keibler, which caused a lot of tension and drama backstage. Orton's personal life was in direct contrast to the clean-cut image WWE tried to project, but the company still protected that image for the sake of Orton's brand. Before his current marriage to Kimberly Kessler, Orton was previously married to his first wife, Samantha Spino, whom he married in 2007. The couple had a daughter, Alana, in 2008. However, after several years together, Orton and Samantha's relationship ended in divorce in 2013. Despite the split, Orton is still a dedicated father to his daughter and still has a strong relationship with her. While the WWE tried to sweep his past under the rug, they couldn't hide the fact that Orton wasn't always the man they wanted him to be, but none of that derailed his career. In fact, his image as the bad boy in WWE was mirrored by his off-screen actions, which only helped to fuel his Viper persona. Even now, while Orton has calmed down and settled into a more stable life, his past still haunts him. The decisions he made, the relationships he damaged, and the man he was in those days are all part of who Randy Orton is today. His personal struggles weren't the only thing that WWE tried to hide, though. There's another part of Orton's life that the company worked hard to keep out of the spotlight: his time in the U.S. Marine Corps. His attitude got him kicked out of the Marine Corps. Long before he became the legend killer in the ring, Orton wanted to serve his country. However, his time in the military was short-lived, and it didn't take long for his Viper attitude to catch up with him. Orton's struggles with authority were something that fueled his WWE persona and later helped him become the reason he was discharged from the Marine Corps. In his younger years, Orton joined the Marines with the intention of making something of himself outside of wrestling, but it quickly became clear that the structured, disciplined environment of the military wasn't a good fit for him. He clashed with the rules, the chain of command, and most importantly, with the authority figures who tried to keep him in line, so he went AWOL. He's always had a defiant attitude towards superiors, and that defiance eventually led to his dishonorable discharge. Orton himself has spoken openly about how he didn't take the military seriously. His reckless behavior and lack of respect for authority led to multiple incidents where he would disregard orders, often with little concern for the consequences. This wasn't the first time he'd shown signs of defiance. His anger issues had already been apparent. The Marine Corps is a place where discipline is everything, and just wasn't the place for someone with Orton's attitude. Despite his potential, Orton couldn't adjust to the strict nature of military life. He was sent to basic training, where he continued to act out, getting into trouble, and disregarding the rules. Eventually, the Marine Corps had no choice but to kick him out. The young Orton's defiance wasn't something they could overlook, and it ultimately ended his military career before it even really began. Being kicked out of the Marine Corps could have been a major setback for Orton, but instead, it became a defining moment that pushed him toward wrestling. This influenced his mindset and strengthened his determination, giving him a grudge that would later help him become a WWE superstar. His rebellious nature only grew stronger, and when he finally entered the squared circle, it was clear that WWE was the perfect place for him to channel his frustration. Orton's time in the Marines was the catalyst for the man he would eventually become, and it wasn't long before he fell under the WWE's radar, and they used it to help create the bad guy persona that would make him a star. WWE's need to keep these aspects of his life hidden only contributed to the popular image they built for him. Now that we've seen how Orton's past shaped his attitude and career, we're left with one final question. Is Orton truly free, or is he still trapped in the WWE? Let's explore that next and find out what's really going on behind the scenes. He's trapped in the WWE. Randy Orton's career has had incredible highs and intense personal challenges, but as much as he's achieved in WWE, he's also trapped in it. Over the years, Orton has become one of the most famous and legendary superstars in WWE history, with multiple championships and the face of the company in a way. But there's a darker reality that nobody knows. Despite his success, Orton has often spoken about feeling boxed in by the very company that made him who he is today. Orton was groomed to be WWE's next big star from a young age, and it didn't take long before he became a fan favorite. As soon as he invented the RKO on a whim, his rise to the top was almost inevitable. But as time passed, the pressure to constantly perform and live up to the WWE's expectations began to weigh on him. Orton's career has been carefully curated by the company, with WWE often dictating his direction and storyline, leaving him with little room to grow outside of the scripted world they've created for him and many others. The more successful Orton became, the more WWE relied on him to uphold the company's image. His persona as the Viper, with its dark, edgy character, was a creation of WWE's marketing team, and it quickly became iconic. But as Orton himself has admitted, it's not always easy to live up to that persona. The pressure to be that character, to constantly be the bad guy, and to live up to the WWE's standards has often left him feeling trapped within the company's system. As a result, Orton has sometimes felt like he was simply a cog in WWE's massive machine. The company's relentless schedule, the demands of staying in character, and the constant need to stay relevant have taken a toll on him mentally and physically. Orton has even described times when he felt like he was being used by WWE, his talents and image being molded to fit the company's needs rather than his own. Despite his frustrations, Orton has stuck with WWE, remaining loyal to the company that helped shape his career. But it hasn't always been easy. Over the years, there have been moments when Orton seemed ready to leave, to break free from the world that WWE had created for him. But the pull of WWE's massive global reach and the legacy he's built within the company kept him coming back, trapped in a cycle of success and frustration. Outside of the ring, Randy Orton has a surprising passion for video games. He's not just your casual gamer. Orton got hooked on Elden Ring and ended up clocking over 600 hours into the game. His love for gaming goes beyond just playing. He's even auditioned for roles in blockbuster films, including the roles of Cable in Deadpool 2 and Wolverine in X-Men. Orton's interest in these roles shows another side of him, a side that craves something other than wrestling. It's just another example of how Orton isn't confined to just one persona. He's always exploring new opportunities. Even now, as a veteran of the ring, Orton's status within WWE isn't what it once was. But he remains a central figure in the company, even though it sometimes feels like he's stuck in a system that doesn't allow him to fully escape. The freedom he once wanted, the opportunity to explore new paths in his career, seems out of reach. Orton's career may have given him fame and fortune, but it's also kept him in a box that he's struggled to break out of. Orton's journey with WWE is pretty complex, and while he may have found success and recognition, the question remains, is he truly free? Or is he still trapped in the WWE, playing the part that was written for him? But despite all of this, he has always found a way to adapt. The man is really resilient, but what's next for Randy Orton? With all the challenges he's faced, what does his future hold in WWE? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed watching this video and would love to keep exploring more exciting videos like this, then go ahead and click on any of the cards on your screen.